Now that it's all done, let's talk about WandaVision. And spoiler warning from here on out, if you haven't seen the show, then go check it out and then come back here.
Well, I think we handled that well.
I will say that I've been a fan of the MCU since the first Iron Man movie. I wasn't all that into the comics or the TV shows or the characters before, but as the series went on, I've basically been able to envelop myself in Marvel canon through just all of the hard work of the nerds who have collected that information before me. And I've become such a fan of just how much the MCU has tried to incorporate all of these stories and characters and ideas into this new universe. And I don't think there's been anything else like this. Like, there was the old Toho monster universe back in the 70s, in the Showa era. Maybe the old Universal monster movie universe before they tried to reboot it and copy the MCU. But we haven't had anything this massive and, incorporating so many different movies and shows and everything in one singular universe in a long time. Maybe the Tommy Westphal universe, if that counts, but that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, I've been big into the MCU. And the one thing they've been lacking on is the TV. Because, unfortunately, until recently, the television was handled by Ike Perlmutter, who is a piece of shit. And so they weren't getting along, and they couldn't have the promise of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. never came to be. The idea of this cohesive movie to TV universe never happened. Because Ike Perlmutter is a piece of shit. But now that Marvel Studios is making their own television series for Disney Plus, and they're hopefully being able to bring over some of the carryovers from like the Netflix series and all that, maybe even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then maybe we can have that cohesive, all-encompassing universe that was promised to us. And it starts off on a great foot with WandaVision. Like with a lot of the MCU movies, this isn't based on any one particular story. It's kind of encompassing a lot of stories. And the big one is House of M, in that Wanda Maximoff uses her powers to create an alternate reality. Only instead of the reality where there's no mutants, it's a reality where she gets to live her life with Vision. And in doing so, brings forth two kids. Who are also from the comics in a whole series of events that Wanda and Vision have kids at one point, and something with Mephisto, because of course it's Mephisto. This mother. But there's also this series called The Vision and the Scarlet Witch, which deals with their relationship in particular, and so there's this mishmash of these ongoing story arcs or these famous story arcs, but telling its own take. In this case, Wanda is a nerd for sitcoms. She just absolutely loves sitcoms. And so her perfect universe is a sitcom. And so from the first episode, and for half of the series, it's all paying tribute to sitcoms. So you start off with the Dick Van Dyke era in the 50s. You go on to the 60s with, I forget what the 60s one was. I think Bewitched was the 60s one. Then you go on to like the Brady Bunch in the 70s, the 80s with things like The Family Matters and all of those Thursday night movie show, whatever what was that called? Well, there's the TGIF line, but there was like a Thursday night block that one of the networks had on lockdown. But yeah, the 80s one, which was a very special episode, the 90s one, which was more like Malcolm in the Middle, and then the 2000s one that was basically Modern Family. And I think while they aren't as executed well, they're more of like a parody of sitcoms than working as full-on sitcoms. They do utilize so much of the stuff from those eras. So like in the 50s, they use practical effects for the magic bits. And they use like quick cutting and, things like that. Things that they would use in the 50s. And so as time goes on, they basically make those episodes that are parodying those eras feel like an episode from those eras, both in terms of the camera quality and the effects and the costuming and all of that. And then you begin to realize underlying all of this is this weird mystery of what exactly is going on in Westview. And so the other half of the series is Jimmy Woo returning from Ant-Man, as well as Darcy returning now as a full-on astrophysicist. And we get the introduction of adult Monica Rambeau, who is the daughter of, what's her name? Captain Rambeau from Captain Marvel, or but the the little girl from Captain Marvel's all grown up, and now she gets to be a superhero. She in the comics was actually Captain Marvel for a period. I don't know if they're ever going to do that legacy stuff, but her main thing is that she basically is able to capture and shoot back energy. It's kind of like Captain Marvel. We see a little bit of it here, but I'm guessing we're going to see way more of it in the Captain Marvel sequel. But her big thing is trying to make contact with Wanda, and eventually, it's through her investigation that she begins to uncover more of the mysteries and kind of snap Wanda out of what is essentially a fugue state. Her grief has created a fugue state in which she's reenacting these sitcom stuff, mainly being held back and pushed by Agatha Harkness, another comic character, not really a villain, but she's treated more as the villainous character because she has this obsession with pushing Wanda's powers and learning more about them because she is the fabled Scarlet Witch. We haven't really used that title in the MCU until now, so now she's officially the Scarlet Witch. And so Agatha Harkness is trying to harness and hopefully use these powers for herself, but in order to do that, she is playing along with Wanda's little, therapy session, I guess. Just her trying to deal with the loss of vision and the effects of the snap and all of this has create this reality-bending fugue state, and she's not ready to deal with this stuff until the series goes on, and by the time the Modern Family parody shows up, she's actually starting to deal with these issues and begin to challenge Agatha Harkness, who has been kind of pushing her, prodding her, and letting her play this all out in the hopes of understanding her powers more. In the meantime, you've got the director of S.W.O.R.D., who is probably the least developed villain character we've ever had in Marvel, but he's just basically a douchebag who wants to destroy Wanda because shooty bang bang. He's not very interesting. They don't really give him much to do except be a douchebag. And we'll see if they do more with him later on and he becomes an actual villain. I don't remember him from the comics. I didn't really see much of anything, like if he became a super villain or something like that. Maybe. Who knows? But he's just basically a douchey government bureaucrat who's like shooty bang bang. Let's blow things up because I have no idea how to actually solve conflicts. But yeah, he's probably the weakest part of the whole thing. But really, the best parts are the titular Wanda and Vision. Elizabeth Olsen just glows in this series. She gets to be all of these iterations of housewives through the sitcom era, as well as develop more of her backstory and more of her character as Wanda Maximoff. And you're really curious by the end what they plan to do with her, because they've made her such a compelling and interesting character. There is a bit of a thing where people feel like she's not punished enough for what she did to the people of Westview. I don't know. We'll see. If there'll probably just be repercussions down the line. They've been doing that this whole time. Like if there's something, everything has repercussions in the MCU. We've been seeing that time and again as the movie goes on. Oh hey, we have continuity. Let's point in repercussions to people's actions. So there'll probably be repercussions for Wanda for the whole Westview incident down the line. But yeah, like holding these people hostage by pure accident, honestly. I think that's the thing, is that it's just her in her grief created this fake town because she's just dealing with all of this garbage. Poor Wanda Maximoff is like the Peter Parker. It's like the female Peter Parker in terms of like, hey, we're just going to have the universe shit all over you. Deal with it. God, just everything. Wanda Maximoff is the MCU's version of the 616 Peter Parker. Just everything awful happens to Wanda for no reason. Just because. Have fun. Oh. But yeah, Paul Bettany returning as the Vision is great. And they actually do something interesting that I didn't expect. Well, kind of expected it, because I mean, when else were you going to do it? But in the comics, there was a bit where they created a white version of Vision because the government is awful, and they decided that a Vision who had, you know, a personality, emotions, you know, thought wasn't a good idea. And so while he was still in a relationship with Wanda, maybe this is just in the comics, just Wanda just gets shit on for no reason. Hey Wanda, how's it going? Good? Okay, let's change that. God. So yeah, they turned Vision into an unfeeling just automaton, and they gave him a new white appearance. And that version actually shows up in like that old arcade beat 'em up with the Avengers. And I remember like, why is Vision white in that game? I don't understand. Apparently that was just a thing at the time. It was his style at the time. But yeah, White Vision shows up, and it's a very interesting way they handled it. He shows up at the very end. He's like the main antagonist for Vision, but the way their final fight plays out is really interesting, and it's totally in line with Vision, who's a goddamn nerd. Vision is an absolute nerd, and so the way they fight is they end up in a library, and they have a philosophical debate about the ship of Theseus. And so Construct Vision that Wanda created, it has this kind of reasons and has this argument and debate with White Vision, who is his old body. And the White Vision is like, I don't remember any of these things. And Construct Vision is like, well, you contain all of my memories, but let me help you access them. And so now they have left the door open for Vision to return as White Vision. And I'm curious how they plan to utilize him in the future, because it's very interesting, and it'll be very interesting to see how they handle basically a Vision who has to deal with the fact that he was recreated to be a weapon. I mean, he always had to deal with that fact because he was originally supposed to be the body of Ultron. But now he has to deal with the fact that he was basically recreated by the government to be property, and now he finally has his memory and hopefully his personality back, all of the things mechanically that created his brain, and probably including Jarvis, maybe? I don't know. They'll probably dig into it more as they use Vision more in the MCU. But yeah, like bringing Vision back as White Vision is a great tribute to the comics, as well as leading to interesting philosophical discussions about how they're going to handle the fact that people still think Vision is technically property because he's a robot. And robots don't have rights. Oh boy, when the mutants get here, it's going to be fun. On top of Wanda and Vision, the best actor in this whole thing is Kathryn Hahn. Kathryn Hahn steals the show, especially in the second half of the series. Like, the finale where she's trying to be a supervillain can be hit or miss because, like, they're trying to make Kathryn Hahn be a supervillain. Like, when she's just going tete-a-tete with Wanda, she's great. But when they're trying to have her do grand villain speeches, like, it's Kathryn Hahn. You're kind of missing the point. But the way they handle Agatha Harkness is interesting because first she's just a background character and the best friend throughout the sitcoms. And then it starts to turn out that she is this other witch. They dig into her backstory, where she came from, why she's manipulating Wanda into using her magic the way she is, and what her plans are. And then the way they handle her is great because they don't get rid of her. They don't remove Agatha Harkness from the MCU. They trap her as Agnes. The fact that that Wanda traps her as Agnes as punishment for trapping her, for keeping her there, and to manipulate her and to study her, essentially, to bring back her an alternate version of her dead brother, which is a great reference to the Fox X-Men movies, and a great for Evan Peters to show up as Quicksilver. That was a great, like, oh my god, they recast Quicksilver. They recast Pietro? That line, oh god, I love Kat Dennings. She's so wonderful. But yeah, like the fact that Agatha helped bring back Pietro as an alternate version of him, I think that's crazy. It's a great reference to the fact that to reference to the Fox universe. I think it would have been more effed up to bring back Aaron Taylor Johnson. I don't know if he was busy or not. Maybe that was the plan. But if they brought back Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver just to mess with Wanda, that would have been insane. But the fact that they made it a dig at like recasting in sitcoms was a great reference. But then once again, Agatha Harkness brought back her dead brother to keep her in the sitcom universe, to keep studying her. So yeah, I don't feel bad that Wanda trapped Agatha Harkness as a sitcom's next door neighbor. But yeah, that means that she can come back as an anti-hero. Kind of like Loki. And I would love for Agatha Harkness, because that's the thing. In the comics, Agatha Harkness was introduced as a supporting character for the Fantastic Four. And while fans were speculating, oh, they're going to bring in the MCU Fantastic Four, or the X-Men, or this or that, or this person, this guy's coming, John Krasinski confirmed for Reed Richards. Fans need to calm down. Like, not everything's going to be the big reveal. Like, sometimes there's going to be big reveals, but the important thing is that they're telling a story here. They're not going to use every single property to drop a bomb into the MCU. Like, this is their way of introducing this character into the MCU. So, people were going crazy. And I think the fact that we're so used to the Netflix mindset of binge it all at once, that we lose track of how television actually works, and that it's weekly. And so we have the time to digest these individual episodes. People are kind of not at a loss for how to handle that now, because they're so used to it being a one and done thing. Netflix has ruined our ability to watch TV. But yeah, in the comics, she's a supporting character for the Fantastic Four. So they could ostensibly bring back Agatha Harkness as a supporting character, either to serve as an antagonist again, or as an anti-hero a la Loki to the Fantastic Four and to Wanda. So they could bring her back, and when she's free, she deals with the whole fact that you trapped me for an X amount of time, and then maybe they fight a bigger bad, and then maybe they face off against Mephisto or something like that. I don't know. I'm just spitballing ideas for what they could do to bring back Agatha Harkness in the MCU. The fact is, she's not going anywhere. And Wanda can keep an eye on her and bring her back whenever she wants. Or whenever the writers want, technically. But plenty of possibilities out there, and I'm very happy with what we got. I think that my biggest thing is the final 2 episodes are the most formulaic to the MCU. And people there's been a whole decrying of like, the MCU is formulaic and military propaganda, and it's like people are trying to throw around words that they don't really know how to use. Once again, deep thought is not going to come from Twitter. It's just people trying to aha each other, you know? It's like that scene from Gumball where Gumball and the Cactus Girl are trying to out-woke each other. That's Twitter in a nutshell.
Have you ever tried whole grain bread? It's far better for you. Not everyone can afford organic stores, Carmen. Maybe you should check your privilege.
Yeah, I have my concerns with the MCU, and the MCU is not the only one that utilizes the military to fund their movies, and while they aren't as prominently pro-military as, Michael Bay, the fact is that Disney is still taking money from the Department of Defense in order to fund its movies. So yeah, that whole thing is not exactly kosher in my mind. It feels very dirty. But that's an industry problem, not specifically an MCU problem. But yeah, their formula kind of shoots itself in the foot. The problem is it works so well that they have no reason to change it. And so to end on a big shooty bang bang CGI fight battle is like, they thankfully subvert it by making Wanda not use solely CGI effects to win the day, but using, cleverness, cunning, trickery, and Vision. While the two Visions do fight, they end their conflict through philosophical debate. So they undercut that cleverly, but it's still a lot of big CGI special effects, and you kind of get lost in it. Like, the last episode is so much just the big ending fight scene. And yeah, I think that's the most MCU it ever got. And I can understand why people were like, oh man, there's such this clever show and then just big CGI fight battle. And yeah, I feel like, oh well. I mean, I just feel like, well, that's to be expected. It's an MCU movie. At the same time, I'm not disappointed either. Like, I'm not fully I'm a little bit let down, but I'm not like, I didn't hate the episode for it. In fact, I think the way they handled it is what fits within the show. This show is probably some of the best. This is top tier MCU for me. And this leaves a very long shadow for Falcon and the Winter Soldier to follow in. And it does leave some interesting points for the next movies. We got another teaser for Captain Marvel 2 and what Nick Fury is doing up with the Skrulls in space. Plus, little teaser for the future of Wanda's kids. Because in the comics, Wanda and Vision did have quote-unquote kids. But they did manage to make them fully realized characters. In fact, Wiccan is one of the first LGBT characters prominently featured in the Marvel comics, I believe. And so Wiccan and Speed are hinted at to still be out there. And they may follow up on that following story where Wanda was able to bring them into reality somehow. So we may get Wiccan and Speed in reality in some form down the line. It would be nice, because they've introduced Cassie Lang is older now. She's not like a little kid anymore. They could totally, if they manage to bring back Wiccan and Speed, and they introduce a couple of more of the younger, like, legacy heroes, we could totally get a Young Avengers going. Whether or not that's on the table or not is unknown to me, but I can see the building blocks for it. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, plus it's very interesting, given the events of everything that happened here, Wanda realizing how much, like, she's basically, they drop the line that she is more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme, which begs the question, what exactly they're planning for her in Doctor Strange 2. That's going to be interesting. So yeah, the next three movies, well, we've got Falcon and the Winter Soldier in 2 weeks. Good Lord. It's going to be 2 weeks before Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But then we've got Loki later on in June, I believe. Plus, Black Widow is finally coming out. The Eternals is coming out. Doctor Strange 2 is coming out. And Captain Marvel 2 is coming out, I think, next year. And then Spider-Man 3 is supposed to come out later this year. So we got it. While we missed MCU last year because of Perfect Cell, we seem to be getting a big glut of it coming, especially now with the Disney Plus shows. So I'm very curious to see what's up next, because this leaves some very interesting questions. And yeah, this is top tier MCU for me.